you're one of the reasonable people, and the unreasonable ones aren't going to listen anyway.
That's the nicest thing you said to me in years.
I know. Moving right along. Let's nobody make note of it. No one.
Boyan, take that out. Take that clip out. I want to hear it again at the end of the year.
Just send it to him with a loop.
As a matter of fact, I expected at the beginning of the show.
No.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Mikkel with the Charles Retina Institute in Memphis, Tennessee, and you're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Welcome to episode 305 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims with HIPAA for MSPs. And joining me is Donna Grindle of Cardin. Good morning, Donna.
Well, good morning, David. You became quite peppy there. After your sneezing fit, you were kind of staring, and then boom, you're very peppy.
That's what you do. You got to put your game face on.
There you
Get
go.
out there.
Get on there. Get out there on that field. Put some dirt on it.
That's right. The show must go on.
Yeah. I was told put some dirt on it more than once, and it had nothing to do. It was like my dad, we still got to finish working on this. You're going to need to put some dirt on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Been there, done that.
All right. So, man, today is just a continuation of crazy.
Yeah.
So as we record this, we've learned that the Colonial Pipeline is coming back on, and apparently they've paid a bunch of money. We'll talk about that. Last week, we talked about Scripps Health and kind of went through a live fallout to show what's going on there. And we have some good news and some not so good news about that. Mm-hmm. We'll share that. But as much as we want to steer away from ransomware as a topic, we can't.
No, we just
can't do it.
It's just not happening.
So it's been a while since we talked about ransomware planning. So we want to give you some tips on how to plan for ransomware, because it's kind of one of those things where probably not a matter of if, but when it's going to have some impact on you and your business, your clients, your patients. So be prepared. And the fallout is great. And so we want to help you look at what things you should be doing and what things to at least consider so that you're not caught with your proverbial pants down.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Proverbial pants down.
So just a reminder of the HIPAA boot camp coming up. Do we still have seats? Because, we're selling them like crazy.
I know there were a few more that came in this week. I think there may be 3 or 4 left.
All right. So there you go. Better get in there, folks. August 17, 18, and 19 is the virtual boot camp. We'll be via Zoom. And if you want to know more, go to thehipaabootcamp.com. And I would certainly encourage you to purchase your tickets now. I think in boot camps past, we've usually had everybody buy tickets the last couple of weeks. And I don't think we're going to make it to the last couple of weeks on this one.
No, well, and often we have to go through that. Can we add one more? Because remember, we keep these very, very small.
Right.
For a reason. We don't build it and charge for it in a way that we're looking for quantity over quality.
Oh, yeah. And so, and as we always do, we take things that have happened since the last boot camp in the news and such. So these things we're talking about now, most likely some of that will be talked about more in the boot camp. And
yeah, we update all the boot camp stuff. We do.
Yeah. So we do that. And so if you came to the boot camp in years past, it's probably a lot different than it was before because we update things often.
Well, we do have alumni coming, and it's because things continue to change, and they're continuing to build their program, and they want, you learn more every time you come for many reasons.
Yeah.
Is that,
when you're drinking from that fire hose, there's a lot that you don't digest. Can't swallow it all.
It's like those dogs that are trying to drink out the fire hose. I always love that.
Yeah, they chased it around.
Yeah, I saw a vid where it was like the two approaches to the same need, and there's this water hose putting water in like a baby pool, and there's one dog drinking the water out of the baby pool, and then all of a sudden you see another dog come flying through and hit the water as it's coming out of the hose, just and then it comes back this way. So, it's just diving up there, just leaping in and grabbing the water as it goes. It's great.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny because when I had the other dog, Moses, he would attack the water.
Yeah.
Ziva runs away from it. Like, don't get me wet. Don't get me wet.
Don't get my hair wet.
I know.
Yeah. All right, brother. Let's get this rolling.
All righty. So here we go. Are you ready?
I am. Did we tell them to thank our donors and share us out and please review us? We got a new review thing on the website.
Yeah, we do. You have to remind me, is it Podchaser?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. So you can go to the website. You can review us on Podchaser. It's a different review service. So check that out. Leave us a review. And as Donna said, thanks to our blood donors.
We need your blood.
Yeah. We need your listening. Thanks to our ear donors. There you go. We need your ear. Lend me your ear.
There you go.
All right. So here we go. Time for the HIPAA
Say what?
segment.
So this week we're going to do a follow-up on the Scripps attack that we talked about last week, just to see how things are going. I mean, our big problem with them wasn't that they had a ransomware attack. They're a victim just like everybody else. Sometimes it's hard to remember that the businesses and the organizations that are hit by these things are victims of crime. And it's hard to remember that, but we have to remember that. The big issue, though, that we had was they were having major privacy problems with the way communications with patients was going on their Facebook feed. Good news was they fixed that. Bad news is that Facebook feed still getting constant comments on it from patients. Back to the good news, because we got good news, we got bad news. We got good news, we got bad news. Back to the good news is that it seems that they've pretty much restored patient care. They're doing surgeries. They're doing the things they need to do to care for patients, which is great because the patients were freaking out because they didn't know where to go or what to do. That happens. But I guess, if you're down for a week and they're still down. So we were talking about it happened. It was a week when we first started talking about it. Here it is a week later and they're still down. But they're getting the patient care done. It's all going back to the old school way, though. If you want medical records, you send a letter to this address. If you want an appointment, you call the doctor's office and you talk to an individual to get an appointment. That's all working, though. But the real anger coming from the patients is we still haven't been told what's happening. And now they're concerned, especially after the Colonial Pipeline, which we're about to get into, that their medical records are no longer private or secure.
And in some cases, they are worried that they're gone.
Yeah, you saw that on there, right?
Yeah. So one lady posted, I'm afraid that 30 years of my medical history has now vanished. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's certainly a concern. I mean, you've got a lot of information in there, a lot of test results, a lot of stuff that you can't go back and just recreate.
Yeah, and the patients are rightly concerned that this is a problem. Either they're gone, or maybe we can't trust the integrity of them, or they're going to be released to the public.
Right.
All of those. Oh, wait. Confidentiality, integrity, availability.
Sounds familiar.
I think we've talked about that before. But I am just thrilled to know that patients are getting the care they need, and the stress that was causing them has now subsided. Because that was the real, moment of fear and how dire people felt when we last visited them, when we last visited the Facebook feed.
Yeah. Yeah. I popped in there earlier this week and, it was still a fallout. And people are saying things like, it's been 2 weeks. When are we going to see our notifications? And I'm like, oh, gosh, you don't know how this works, do you?
Yeah, they're expecting to get a letter right away. And it's like, if they're down, they still don't even know how much the impact is possibly.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, just think of, I don't know how big the breach is, but it takes days just to prepare the notification to get it out.
Yeah. And you don't even, first you've got to figure out all the patients you're going to notify. And when you notify them, you have to tell them what parts of their data was involved. So you have to know, what was there, and you don't want to go, everything we have, it got.
It got. Well, at least I hadn't seen anybody post on Facebook, consider this your notification.
No, right? Oh, wow.
But yeah.
So what had happened was, but as we mentioned last week when we were discussing this, I said we have to do another ransomware. We don't want to, but I created the title in the notes right then and there, ransomware, how bad is it really? We did not know that within hours of us recording that, well, actually, it could have been minutes even, that we would all start learning about the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack that has occurred that shut down the gas lines to the entire East Coast.
And it brings out the best in people.
It does.
Indeed.
It's like, what part of good idea? How does your brain think putting gasoline in a bag is a good idea?
Somebody run to Walmart, get some bags.
Yeah, get hefty. Make sure you get the hefty ones. And a water bottle.
I'm surprised we hadn't heard of serious bodily injury or death.
Yeah.
With people riding around with trash bags of gasoline, which, by the way, gasoline will eat through the trash bag. So, I'm like, come on now. Did you not play with gas when you were a kid?
Right?
Is it just me? Am I the only firebug?
Well, it was a test. We were doing laboratory tests. The lab was outside, though, in the yard. I'll
never forget the day I realized that gasoline eats through a Solo cup. It's not good.
Things did not go well for David.
No.
There's a lot of things when you grow up in the country where everything around you is a laboratory.
I know.
You get to test and try things.
We didn't have the internet and video games to keep us occupied. And so, as they say, the idle mind is the devil's playground. And he played a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I remember studying. And we were like, I'm studying the physics of how fast a BB comes out of a BB gun and goes down the slide on the swing set. And if you could get the BB out of the gun and actually have it would slow it down till you could catch it at the bottom. Let me just tell you, it's really hard to make the BB actually hit the slide so that when you do try to catch it, it will not go well for you. But it only gives you a giant blood blister, is note to self.
Do you remember back in the probably late 70s, maybe early 80s, they had the show on called That's Incredible. Mm-hmm. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And so all these people would do things and, that's incredible. So they had this one guy who could take, I don't remember if it was a rifle or a pistol, but, to have somebody who would have a cigarette in their mouth and he would shoot the cigarette out of their mouth. Uh-huh. So I got the bright idea to tell my sister to hold a small twig and I shall take my BB gun. Yes, my Red Ryder BB gun. And I shall, as I have seen on TV, shoot the twig from your hand. Apparently my aim was not great. And I shot her in the hand. And to this day, I'm still reminded of that. To which I remind her, you're the idiot who held the stick.
Which brings us perfectly back around to, hey, go get some hefty bags and put some gas in it,
Yeah, my sister might be the person that would do that.
You're also the reason that they have to say, don't try this at home all the time now.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't do what you see on TV.
No.
Yes,
But-
I was that kid.
Yeah. But the madness around the gas, I mean, I looked at it and said, I'm going to Hilton Head next weekend. 7 to 10 days it'll take for them to recover. There might be some gas problems. I'll fill up now.
I did the same thing. Yeah. Actually, I filled
no
up.
big deal.
I filled up before, like the day before it came out, I had filled up. And I'd driven around a little bit, but I didn't even go top off. I'm like, okay, no big deal. This gas will typically last me a week and a half anyway. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
And, but dude, these people going around and just hogging up everything. And it's not, and I've seen articles about this. It's not the pipeline being down that caused the shortage. It's people's response to it.
Yeah. Just like the toilet paper.
Just like the toilet paper. Yep. And again, I buy more ammo, which you can't find that either.
Oh, jeez. The big issue, though, is why is the whole thing down?
Mm-hmm.
And the company, they haven't really made a lot of public comments, but there are a lot of stories that are coming out from it comes from enough people that have confirmed it in the world of cybersecurity, as well as, I've been reading all the cybersecurity coverage of it, not the, what everybody else sees is the news, no matter what it is. It's the cybersecurity coverage that we usually track because that's usually the only place these stories are.
Yeah. Well, they get deeper into the information you and I want. It's not the 30-second, nightly news version.
Or where they have to explain what ransomware is. I'm like,
yeah.
And what's fascinating to me is I can't believe people don't know what it is.
Yeah. I talked to a guy yesterday. He's a business owner, owns a landscaping business. And the first words out of his mouth when I answered the phone is like, business must be good. I didn't know ransomware was this big of an issue. And I'm like, are you serious? Yeah, it's been a big issue. This is not even the half of it, but we've just had some very, very big ransomware and breach things happening this year with the Colonial Pipeline and then the software supply chain hack with SolarWinds, and so just it's getting a lot of more publicity. But you and I are looking at this going, it's happening all the time. Happens all the time.
This is why we have a podcast that's lasted. Do you believe this is 6 years? I think this comes out. It'll be like the official 6-year release sometime around Memorial Day. I don't remember how.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So maybe we should change it. Help me with ransomware.
It's the way it feels like, I tell you that.
We had the conversation a while back, and I don't remember when, but we talked about, will we ever get away from talking about ransomware? Or is it going to be a top problem every year? And when we talked about it then, I think it was a couple of years ago, we were like, it's not going away anytime soon, because every time we think that it's starting to die down, they create a new and better way to do it. And we've talked about how they've shifted their business model many times, and it's yet shifting again.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like when we had the guys from Caveat on and we say, okay, what is the big story? And it was like Ben's all about, the law and the privacy. That's his job. Mm-hmm. And then he does his gig, but then we cut over to Dave. Dave goes, ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all you need to know. Ransomware. But it is not going away. Mm-hmm. And I would like to point out, as so frequently occurs, Colonial Pipeline headquarters in Metro Atlanta. Yeah, it's always.
Yes, I heard. The first thing I saw, I was like, what in the world is wrong with these people in Georgia?
I know. It's going to be in Georgia, and if not, it's going to be in the Southeast. Almost always these big things happen. And I saw it on the local news first and then went to the cybersecurity news. I said, that's so rare, right?
Yeah.
But, we've gotten all these crazy headlines, but, Colonial Pipeline hack, most significant attack on critical infrastructure ever, was one of the ones that I really, that one's CNBC or Bloomberg or somebody. We'll have a link to it. But those kinds of headlines. Now, again, ours are the cybersecurity folks, and we've got, Colonial Pipeline, a global day of reckoning. Rise of dark side. Ransomware victims have been surging. Colonial Pipeline. And I thought this one was very interesting. All monsters are human. It's still people, And then the teardown inside the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. Those are the ones that I'm starting to really pay attention to so that we can fully understand what happened. And granted, just like with scripts, we're not going to know. A bunch of it we will never know.
Right.
But we're not going to know a lot of things. But I found it very interesting listening to some of these interviews with folks who were just fascinated. They were just totally, why is it companies don't have to tell us what happened, and that why can they cover these things up?
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a law. And, for the most part, any question about whether or not there's going to be any kind of legislation about it, it flipped its head. This is flip the coin, I would say. Wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who knows what'll come of it? I don't know. We talked about this with Ben and Dave. Will it be the states that jump on this first? Will it be the federal government? I don't know, but I know that people are looking at this and looking at things like this, and they're like, something has to happen. I did see that one representative from somewhere talked about, we need to make paying the ransom illegal. And although it will be painful initially, eventually these criminal gangs will stop doing it because people aren't paying. It's all about the money. If the money dries up, then the way they're getting the money will dry up.
But on the flip side of that, if you're a victim and you can't let's talk about what we do know, or at least what we think we know right now about this particular attack.
Okay.
Because from what we can tell, and again, it's only what we know right now. It could be change. I am not reporting this as fact. Because who knows? But according to the information that's coming out now, they paid $5 million, like right away. Apparently, they paid it like almost immediately. Got the decryption key. And how many times have we talked about just because you pay doesn't mean you get everything back?
Yeah. Yeah. And let's say it's all works perfectly. It's still, depending on the size of the data, it could take days or weeks just for the decryption to finish so that you can use the data. So it's not, this is one of those things people misunderstand. They think, if I pay, I just plug in this password and boom, I'm back in business. No, no, that is not how it works.
And apparently that's what these folks thought, because you have to remember, well, first of all, just the way that it works, encryption's faster than decryption. Just right out of the gate. It's faster to encrypt, and so they're able to just fly through your systems and encrypt things. Decryption is by nature slower, and then add to it that these guys have no reason to write super efficient decryption code. And, the speed that the computers need to be able to do this, if they don't have all the resources to run this stuff. And apparently the decryption key, in this case, the decryption routines were so slow in doing their work, which I don't know what is controlling that. Is it the systems are that limited in resources? But apparently it's so slow, they decided they had to bail and restore anyway.
Yeah. So $5 million out the window.
Pretty much.
I can think of a lot of cybersecurity you can put in place for $5 million.
Well, actually, the other point is that they, remember, were publishing the data out on their Tor site. So the $5 million, you still had to pay to guarantee that they would take down the data that they stole.
Yeah. So even if they didn't get the data back, just the fact that they take down the public data that's supposed to be private and they're not going to release this in any other methods. If you take their word as being honest criminals,
we're honest criminals.
Yeah, then I guess you could say that's what you paid for.
Yeah. So maybe that works out for them. What was interesting is Cyber Reason just did a blog post April 1st talking about Dark Side, and all of them. They did that back then. And now here we are talking about it again, where Dark Side operates ransomware as a service.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this before. This is not some dude in a hoodie in a basement. It offers up the malware for lease. In the blog post last month, they said they recently announced on hack forums that it had upgraded its offering, releasing DarkSide 2.0 with the fastest encryption speed on this underground market, they said. And it includes Windows and Linux versions. So I don't have to worry about it because I'm on Linux. Poof, out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that fascinating that they were following them just a month ago. And these folks, according to Krebs on Security, they didn't surface till August 2020.
Oh yeah, they're new.
Yeah. So this is not the ones that you already knew. And by the way, several of the ones that we knew last year, the Rick, whatever, still around. Still around.
See, what DarkSide should do is they should come up with a faster decryption option, and that way they can do upsells.
Exactly. They need to think about that. But the big picture is, in his article, he pointed out that these folks, they say it targets big companies and forbids the affiliates from dropping ransomware on organizations in several industries, including healthcare, funeral services, education, public sector, and nonprofits. Now, that's not exactly what it says. So for all of you in healthcare, you need to know this is what it says. Because if you don't understand healthcare, this may seem like they're saying healthcare, but it's not what they're saying if you understand it.
That's why you should listen to us.
Well, if you're talking healthcare, it says, based on our principles, we will not attack the following targets. And then in that list, it says medicine. And after that, there is a little caveat called parentheses.
Yeah.
That always says, we're about to tell you a little bit more about that. And then it says only hospitals, any palliative care organizations, nursing homes, companies that develop and participate to a large extent in the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine. That is not all healthcare.
Mm-mm.
So probably these guys aren't doing scripts, one can hope. But you know what? First of all, I'd like to know what they call a big company, because they're looking for $1 million bounties. Well, okay.
Yeah, that's not that big of a company.
Yeah. And also, they did not include labs, doctor's offices, clinics, MRI centers, ambulatory surgical centers. None of those things are included in their list.
Dentist office.
Oral surgeons. All of those.
Yeah, we could go on and on and on.
Yeah. So they didn't mention it. But we do know, apparently, that this group, what did they say? It was really careful the way they announced it. It is not the Russian government, but it comes from Russia. So basically, the gang is in Russia, and they make it clear that they don't attack any, let's just call it Eastern Bloc countries.
Mm-hmm.
There's a list. So they only attack English-speaking and Spanish, and I think they said, didn't you say they had one in Brazil?
Yeah.
Okay, so that includes Portuguese.
So, one thing is, if you don't want to take the precautions against ransomware, one thing you can do is you and your entire staff can learn Russian, and then you change your computers to Russian language And so with the ransomware realizes that you're not using an English language and it won't encrypt your computers.
Well, and you'd also need to use a VPN.
Yeah, but say you're in Russia. So if you want to go through all that trouble,
you got a fighting chance of keeping them out.
you might have, well, at least from Russia, but not the other countries.
True that. So, but the big picture here is we're still looking at, first they paid to, their extortion fee, and supposedly that's going to get the information off of the Tor site. And then they're restoring and got things back up and running. But it's still going to take, I saw one like oil and gas industry person say that it would still take about 7 to 10 days to fully recover the system, not like the technology system, but the flow of the infrastructure system.
Yeah. And then couple that with the fact that we already have some supply chain disruption because we don't have enough drivers of tankers to get the gas out.
Well, you have to have hazmat things and all kinds of stuff. So you can't just be anybody. You've got to be trained. So, there's a lot of stuff going on. We have supply chain shortages. Ketchup packs, for goodness sakes. Ketchup packs.
Yeah.
We've had a part for our refrigerator door that every time you open the refrigerator, it goes, because it needs a new part. That part's been ordered for 6 months and months, let's just say.
Wow.
Every time you open the refrigerator, you go, supply chain, supply chain.
Well, if people weren't using their Ziploc bags for gasoline, they could put ketchup in it.
That's what they should be doing, is taking their Ziplocs and selling them with ketchup.
Exactly. Just get the little sandwich bags, fill them up with ketchup and sell them to the restaurants.
And there's supposedly like a chicken wing shortage or something. And I saw somebody, I don't know what they're going to do in North Carolina, man. I saw somebody, we ain't got no wings.
Oh yeah. You got a shortage of wings or barbecue. That's dangerous.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of shortages going on. This was just adding to it. And it has brought things to when you look at with some of those, the day of reckoning, and, we're due for some sort of legislation and blah, 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 blah. It's coming.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we aren't even covering the topics that we were going to cover about ransomware, which was a new report telling us how bad it is. A study that said 92% who pay don't get their data back.
Yeah, say that one more time.
92%. That's a 9 and a 2 with a percent sign.
Yeah.
Who pay don't get their data back.
Mm-hmm.
They maybe get parts of it, but they don't get all of it. And then you're not sure it's accurate. And then we were going to talk about a new CISA alert that told us about a new ransomware gang that's not this one. 5 hands. But no, we're going to talk about this one.
That's creepy just thinking about.
I know.
Some guy running around with 5 hands.
The gang has 5 hands. So maybe it's 3 people and one of them lost a hand. I don't know. It's whatever it is. We can't even cover those. But we realize that it is important that we discuss, what do you do when you're hit? I don't care what business you're in today. If you do not have a plan, or at least have thought about what would happen if you were hit with ransomware, how would you handle it? I would say that you're being an irresponsible business owner. I can't, no. So at least learn what it is, so we don't have to talk about that in every news story, so we get something new. All right, So we're going to give you 6 tips.
All right. Should we preface this by saying, if you think you're too small, or that, IT's got this covered, you shouldn't worry about it. If you think those things, you're already fighting an uphill battle. Most of these people, or places rather, most of these places that get hit, they have some security in place. They have antivirus, and sometimes they have IT and all this other stuff, but they still get hit.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference from IT security and cybersecurity. There's a huge difference. And then when you throw privacy in on top of it, it's even more so. All right. So you ready to get into these tips?
Yes, I am.
All right. Tip number 1, have a real plan, not just an assumption that you will know what to do.
Yeah. We'll do blah, 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 blah. It is, I think, one of the most valuable quotes, and I need to pull it and just like put it somewhere that we can always pop it back into an article when we talk about ransomware. But the president of the hospital that was hit back in the fall, I want to say, like October timeframe, who said, if you had asked me 6 months ago if it would be this bad, we would have told you no way, that we have a plan.
Yeah.
So,
and that makes me wonder when people say stuff like that, like, who did you have involved in your planning? Because if you would have brought IT in, they probably would have told you it was the end of the world. Because, we're always freaking out about how bad it can be. But I think people look at us and go, oh, come on, it can't be that bad. I'm like, no, it can be.
Oh, you can fix it. You just act like it's hard so that we think you know more.
Yeah. Well, some of people's understanding of ransomware comes from TV.
True that.
We talked about this in the past where I was watching a medical TV show and hospital gets hit with ransomware, and it's amazing that within the 30 minutes of the show, they recovered all the systems, and, just unbelievable.
Yeah. It's just like everything. It don't work that way.
Yeah.
It don't work that way. So you need to realize that, we say, when we do the ransomware plan, in whether it's through the policies and procedure building that we do with our clients or even at the boot camp, we say, if you don't have a ransomware response playbook, a specific plan to deal with ransomware, not just we have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
You need a specific one to deal with ransomware. That's where you need to start. Go make one today.
Oh, yeah.
And because the likelihood of this, I don't know how anybody could think the likelihood is not through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact through the roof.
Yep.
Well, that means you better have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Tip number 2, understand what your insurance covers and how to quickly open a cyber attack claim. Now, this is the one for me that gripes me a little bit, because I need to remind people that saying that I'm sure my insurance will cover this is not a response plan. I don't know that you know this, but a lot of your insurance that you pay for also says that you will have certain protections in place, certain monitoring in place, certain log reviews in place, or they're not going to cover your claim.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to know about that beforehand.
You need to go back and review your application and make sure you didn't embellish what your security program really does.
Yeah, because I know for a lot of people, I know when I read some of that stuff, I have to read it closely because I'm like, okay, wait a minute, what are they asking me here? Because some of it's hard, even for me as an IT person. Some of it, I'm sitting there going, okay, wait a minute. So I know that it is not possible that most people can read this thing and fully understand what they're checking the yes box to. Oh, yeah, we got that. No, you don't. You do not have that.
No, you don't know what you don't know. We say that a bunch, but if you're filling out those applications, you should go back and figure out what you don't know.
Yeah. And, hats off to my clients who bring those things to me, because it's always a very interesting conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how much I try to educate, there's always at least one piece where they go, I thought y'all were doing that. And I'm like, at what point did you think that? Because we've never even had that conversation.
Yeah.
So, those bring up great conversations, but it just goes to show, don't assume that IT's doing it for you.
Right. That gets into know who to call.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you hear, well, what's your plan? And well, we're going to call you.
Yeah. Almost every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to call you. That's not a plan.
No. So tip number 3, though, is you should have a list of who you will call. And yes, a physical list. Because I'm telling you, when the crap hits the fan, you are not going to be thinking about, okay, step 1 is this, step 2 is that. If you don't have a written playbook and a written plan to follow, you're going to be running around scrambling because the pressure will be immense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have time to figure it out.
No.
Every second counts with some of this stuff.
So some people to have on your list, of course, the IT provider or MSP, some type of cyber forensics. You may need to get them involved. Again, don't assume that your IT company provides forensics.
Because they don't.
Most do not. Lawyers and not just, not your contract lawyer necessarily.
No.
Do you have lawyers that specifically can address these incidents?
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement, and that may involve state, federal, maybe local too.
Even.
Yeah, local too.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you call local and they're like, I don't know what to do. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So it just depends. I've seen local jurisdictions where they go, well, we'll do a report, but that's all we can do. So you need to understand what you should be doing, because sometimes they're not going to help you very much if you don't call the right ones. How about this one? Public relations.
Yes. Hello.
I mean, because you're talking about some brand damage. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say brain damage. Brand damage.
Yeah, just knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And make sure that you involve leadership of the company, but it's the ones who know there is a plan and knows what's on the plan. So that tells you 2 things. Somebody in a leadership position needs to do that, be part of the plan. And then they need to be brought in to manage what's going on. And another important thing to remember is the forensics and the lawyers and the PR and all that kind of stuff. Those may come through your insurance company.
Yeah. You may not have an option. So if I'm your IT provider and your insurance company says we shall bring in our own IT, I don't know how much I can be of service potentially. But you're also going to have to get all these people on the same page. Somebody's got to be the person that is directing all this. Now, your insurance provider again may provide this person, but somebody has to bring everybody together. This is what's happening. Let's do some information sharing. Let's everybody understand where we're going and what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot of things to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of that have to happen simultaneously. All of these things need to be going on. So I'm on these teams now that, the insurance companies activate the teams, and I work with attorneys and forensics and those kind of things as part of, the HIPAA, figuring it out, privacy, security, because I speak all those languages. It's a lot easier for me to understand what's going on, but that doesn't mean that you just pull a switch and all that starts happening. Somebody's got to be responsible for dealing with employees. Somebody's got to be responsible for dealing with, this other stuff, but you've got to have IT that's helping. Okay, how can we keep the business running? How can, somebody's got to do investigations. Somebody's got to figure out how you're going to start decrypting or whatever.
Yeah. Well, all that kind of leads into number 4, which is know how you're going to communicate with employees, customers, clients, patients. Communication is a huge task, and it's also a huge problem, because if you're not communicating, particularly with your employees, they will communicate. They will communicate with each other, and they will communicate with your patients, and they're not going to communicate the way that you want them to, nor with the information that you want them to.
Well, we saw that happening on the Scripps Facebook feed.
Yeah, we did. We saw patients that were conversing with employees. We saw employees conversing with other employees. All this is happening. And employees are the ones in the beginning. If you go back and look, employees were the ones sometimes that were responding to the patients about what was going on.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, find that person and take the keyboard away.
Well, we saw that. Please send me, where is your appointment? And the person's given all of their information about the doctor they're seeing, the date of their appointment, everything. And we're like, not in a public forum. And okay, well, DM me. Okay, not on. Maybe that's what your fallback is, but you should know. And somebody has to be in that position with a plan so that employees know what to do. And you immediately start providing information to the patients, because if you just go read how angry those people were.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Some still are. But, you also have to remember, even when all this is going on, HIPAA doesn't fall by the wayside.
No.
And even if you're not in a company that has to follow HIPAA, there are still state requirements for privacy and stuff like that. Depending on the industry you're in, you might have some other stuff. But you can't just say, well, have them send a text or have them communicate over Facebook or whatever, because you might not be able to do that.
Well, you've got to at least have a plan that states why you think that's acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And without some sort of plan, it's almost certain that the privacy and security requirements go out the window.
Yeah.
So then you have another problem on top of these problems that you'll have to deal with later, because you're not going to have time to deal with that right now.
And this is why sometimes when OCR comes out with those notifications of, we're going to let you use different methodologies, during the COVID pandemic, you don't have to use the typical methods for telehealth. We're going to use discretion and all that. It's fantastic that they're doing that. The downside is that oftentimes people don't understand that it is a alternative that they're allowing you to use. It's not the way you should be doing it.
Right. And that's why we have never said that's a good idea. That's an exception, not a rule.
Yeah. Because then it's going to be, somebody's going to say, well, we did it that way, 2 years ago and it was all right.
Well, and you don't get that enforcement discretion because you have a ransomware attack.
Right.
That doesn't go out the window. They are still, based on the messages, doing telehealth visits at Scripps. They've been able to get patient care restored, although that staff is going to just pass out when this is done, because we're on our second week, which brings us to number 5.
Yeah, number 5, prepare to be completely down for at least 10 days.
Yep, 10 days.
Yep, because that's the average, and it's going up.
Yeah, and the way that you reduce that is you have a plan, then you will be on the low end bringing the average down. Mm-hmm. The reason the average keeps going up is the criminals are getting better and the victims aren't prepared.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, let's say, we talked about this earlier, but let's say you do have a quick response and all this, there's still a time frame in which it takes to either recover from backups or, if you decided to pay the ransom, and you know how we feel about that, the decryption time and all that. But there is not a magic flip a switch, you're back online and going process. It takes time, because you don't just have the process of let's get back to business. You also have, we must investigate. We need to know how this happened. How can we make sure that when we bring things back online that we're not going to still have the same problem? How do we prove what was taken and or breached? Because that makes a big difference. And that's why we tell IT people, don't just run in and start nuking and paving everything. You got to preserve that evidence. And so that's a lot of things that have to happen. And so getting people back up and running quickly is just not something that's going to happen in a ransomware attack.
Well, and you can be prepared to restore and have all of that in place. And then you still have to pay to, keep them from publishing your data.
Right.
So everybody's like, don't pay. Well, when they've got the data out there ready to publish it, you don't really have a lot of choices.
Yeah. So you're not paying for the decryption. You're paying to not release the data.
Yeah.
Into the public.
And you hope that the payment works.
Yeah, you do.
because you're going to need to notify a bunch of patients. So guess what?
That's
number 6.
Yep. So tip number 6 and the final tip, how are you going to handle notifications to your entire client or patient base? I can tell you how not to do it.
Mhm.
Don't do it over social media. Don't do it with postcards.
Mm-mm.
The other thing that we've seen, particularly with scripts, is that people expect notifications almost immediately.
Yeah.
And we saw it today. We read through, like, when are we going to be notified? And I'm like, you don't know how this works, do you?
Uh-huh. So you need to be able to know in that, going back to number 4, when you're communicating, that you let them know that the investigation has to complete before you make public statements and notify patients of the details. You got to learn the details.
Yeah. So I don't know what all Scripps is doing on that front as far as trying to set some type of expectation. I know they're saying things like, well, we have to finish the investigation. I don't know that I wouldn't put some type of number out there to say it takes, for example, it takes up to 30 days.
Mhm.
So people are going, oh, okay, this is not something that we're going to hear about in the next few days. Just to give them some number to look at. I don't know if that's a great idea or not. I just think that if you give me something that's arbitrary, like whenever the investigation ends, I don't know. Is that today? Is that tomorrow? Yeah. Is it a week?
That's my next question. When is that going to be?
Yeah. What do you, give me something. But if you tell me it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks, then I know, okay, I might as well not even look at this again for another month.
Right. Well, you're one of the reasonable people, and the unreasonable ones aren't going to listen anyway.
That's the nicest thing you said to me in years.
I know. Moving right along. Let's nobody make note of it. No one.
Boyan, take that out. Take that clip out. I want to hear it again at the end of the year.
Just send it to him with a loop.
As a matter of fact, I expected at the beginning of the show.
No. Not doing it. I would like to retract my previous statement. I don't know what.
You didn't think that one through, did you? You didn't think that one through at all.
No. That's going to get me in trouble for a long time. So there's our 6 tips. Go review your plan. If you think you have a plan, make sure those are in it. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a plan, go build one and use that as your starting point.
At least have a plan to plan.
Yeah. Don't say, we're so busy right now, I'm going to do that in July. Because guess what?
Yeah, you'll get hit.
You'll get hit like June 30th.
Uh-huh. Yeah, July 4th's coming. You, if you don't know, listeners,
we got one coming up before then.
Yeah, if you don't know, it's typically a Friday afternoon or a holiday or both. Especially when a holiday falls on weekends. Those are the high times to get hit.
Yep. Well, look at this. When all of these occurred, so what day of the week is March 1st or May 1st? What day did we learn about the colonial attack? These are all, it's not like Wednesday that most of these happen.
Oh, no.
Right?
No. So May 1st, Saturday. So we got a weekend. Mm-hmm. I think colonial was probably hit on a Friday.
Yep. So keep that in mind, and then you add to it a holiday.
Yeah. So just what I would do is just Thursday night, shut everything down, take a long weekend every weekend. No, but you and I both know that what we don't know is how long these people were in place before they did the ransomware piece. They could have been in there for weeks. Who knows?
I know. I saw a thing that said dwell time is plummeting. This is exciting. And I go, look, well, it was 320 days and now it's 73.
I mean, that's a big drop, but still think about that, folks. People
dwell
are in your
time
systems.
Is how long they've been in there, just to be clear.
They're in your systems for 73 days before you know about it. Mm-hmm. And probably the only reason you know about it is because something popped up on your screen that says, we're here.
Yeah. Time to pay.
Yeah. Oh, man. Scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. That is our show for today, folks. Remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media sites and rate our podcasting app. As always, you can send your questions to Donna. She has nothing to do. And remember that HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.